Hey D&D fam, I'm Quick.
And I'm Lee, and you're listening to
Divas and Ducats. So what is a diva? I think divas get a bad rep, but to me, diva is all about the attitude.
As for ducats, it's your finances, your assets, Skrilla, guap, your coin. We're talking all things with the potential to affect your pockets.
And while we're attorneys by trade, we are divas by choice. Divas and Ducats is for edutainment purposes.
Y'all, we are not Series 511 or 703 professionals. This does not create a financial advisor or attorney-client relationship. The views expressed here are solely our opinions and the opinions of our guests.
It's just our opinions, y'all. Okay, divas, let's talk ducats.
Hey y'all, welcome back. If you are watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe below and follow us on the things, Instagram, Facebook, Divas and Ducats. So today we are talking about friends in business.
Yep, we are. And it is I don't know, for us it's been easy. I think it's an interesting topic. For me, it largely depends on what the business is and how much it requires for you to invest to start it up.
That could make a difference in the
what your
level of intensity.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
So, so let's get into it.
All right. So I think we're in this space where, let's be honest, life is expensive, wages aren't going up, so a lot of people are interested in being entrepreneurs, whether it's they want their time to be their own time, whatever the reason, a side hustle. So, business ownership is a thing. I think it has its benefits, especially in the Black community. If you have a successful business, you can employ other people, maybe people that look like you. So it is good for the community to have these like businesses, small businesses, locally owned. And so I think while it is good, sometimes the development of the business, the running of the business, if you're dealing with, especially like you're working with friends in particular, it can be challenging because there's a relationship outside of business.
Right.
And how to kind of walk that tightrope, if you will, and keep that balance between the two. I think it takes a little bit of practice there.
Yeah. I think it takes a little bit of practice and it takes a lot of communication. Probably in areas that you probably aren't used to having in your friendship, right?
Yeah.
Some of those lighter communications, I think, when talking about business, I always think about it like a bank. Like, what would they want to know? These are kind of conversations that we would need to be able to have. Are you comfortable talking to me about a business plan? What are your goals? What are we hoping to achieve? Are we aligned there?
Yeah.
Why do you want to start it? Is it because, you're going through a divorce and you need to pay a bunch of money and after that's done, you out? And I have different views, So I think, just even deciding why you're even wanting to go into that business is important. So, you have to be able to be comfortable having, I don't necessarily think they have to be uncomfortable conversations, but deeper dive conversations than you would in your friendships. And I think a lot of the times that those are things that you need to pay attention to. Are you the one always trying to pull the meetings and they're like, okay, whenever you're ready, you do this and you do this and you do this and I'll be there. Because, those are things you want to pay attention to when you're starting up that business. Are you the one that's going to always be
doing the work?
Yeah, doing the work.
And that's a good segue because I do think you have to be honest with yourself about roles. I think sometimes more is better because you can disperse the work, but with more business partners comes more votes, becomes more opinions or whatever. So I will say, working with you, there's just two minds coming together and it's easier kind of to divide the things that have to be done up by honestly, to some extent, like, I don't want to call it talent, but just areas of strength.
Yeah.
And so I will say, to your point, when we decided, like, hey, we want to do this Divas and Ducats thing, and we do want to extend it beyond a podcast. But in starting a podcast, who's our audience? Like, to your point about that deeper dive, we had the conversation where it was literally like
Yeah.
a worksheet of like, what's our 1 year goal, or
I
what's our
remember that
yeah,
worksheet.
what's our little 3 year goal? What do we want to do? And like outside of podcasting, because of course when we started, like, podcasts are blowing up now. Everybody has a podcast, and so, and I think we spoke on it before. It's a lot easier, of course, if you already have a big following, or of course you're famous,
Right.
to get those sponsorships and to get, most podcasts are paid by advertisements.
Right.
So it's kind of like, okay, so then how do we plan to monetize this in some way outside of that? Because that's not necessarily our
Yeah.
journey within this.
Yeah.
And so even being able to talk through that and think through that, and like, I think the statistic is, I can't remember the percentage, but a good majority of businesses fail within the first 5 years. So understanding that it was going to take some time from this is our idea to, okay, we're actually like seeing something coming in, and being committed to, we're willing to, invest the resources in what it costs to record, what it costs to, because recording is not free.
Not unless you're one of those people that can do it at
right,
your home.
unless you're just
And,
very tech savvy,
Yeah.
and you know how to edit videos, and but you would still have to get the equipment.
You got to get the
record.
videos. You got to get the mic. Yeah.
So that, like, the platforms that you hold your podcast, are like, we were willing to invest that capital, our own money, until we were at a point where we're bringing money in from other resources. So again, to your point, was just like a more, I guess, personal example of those deeper conversations of like, what are we trying to do?
Yeah. And I mean, I think to that sometimes you don't, especially if you're going into a new venture, like we had to learn so many different things,
Yeah.
Like now we do it without thinking about it, but we had to learn so many different things, and then those are costs you can't initially count up because you don't even know they exist, right? So just, I think it's really important to, everybody's not always going to be on a dollar for dollar equal footing when you go into those partnerships. But, just make sure that you definitely are with somebody that is like-minded, that they spend the same way, that y'all can have those kind of financial conversations, because there will be expenses, and you don't know how long it's going to take for that journey to start generating that income and giving you that return. So do you have that capital to last, a year or 2 years of your own? Like that's conversations that, you have to have.
Yeah, for sure.
And even being able to set that deadline, like, we've been doing this for 6 years and ain't nothing happening. We got to call it quits. Those, again, those are conversations, that you have to have, because some people are just like dreamers and they're just like, oh, in 6 months, we're going to be rich.
Yeah.
You need to know that too.
Right,
That's what you're working with.
Yeah. And that made me think, like, I think a good habit to have if you're going to go into business with a friend or friends, plural, is my therapist calls them hard transitions. So you have to have those meetings where, like, we're going to have a business meeting and we're going to talk about these things. And that's separate from our time together as friends where we're hanging out or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that keeps things organized and it keeps you accountable, but it also keeps the conversation like less awkward. Sometimes it's gonna be hard to, like, we're not talking business over nachos. Like, I'm trying to have a good time. I'm not trying to talk about
and drinks. Right.
Right.
Some margaritas.
Yeah. And then like a yearly, just like, we talk about these goals and assessing the end of the year and all of that, a yearly kind of thing of like, okay, this is what we did or we achieved this year. These are the areas that we still need to kind of improve or step up in.
Yeah.
What do we want to do differently? You almost need to have, I mean, I'm fancy, so I'll call it a retreat. You know what I mean? You can pull up and get a massage or something. I don't know. But, you need to have that little, whether you call it retreat, goals meeting, whatever, that every year kind of be checking in to see where you are, if you have the same goals, if things have changed based on what you've learned. Sometimes you learn new things and it's like, okay, I'd like to pivot. Because one of the things that we talked about is, Divas and Duckets will not always be just like the podcast.
Right.
It'll be part of what we do because, of course, it's how we introduced ourselves. But there's other things that we want to do under the moniker Divas and Duckets.
Right. For sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also you have to be willing to have, to be able to pull your emotions back. Because, I don't necessarily know if it's the same way with men. But I think, especially if women are getting together to build a business together, that you have to be able to draw that line of, okay, this is just a business conversation. This isn't an attack on my relationship. This is an attack on me. Because I think about situations where like one person might be able to have to invest more and they need to be able to come to the table of like, these are my fears. Like, this is the thing that I'm worried about, without you feeling like, oh, you think I'm irresponsible. You got to be able to be like, you bring in a large bucket. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think you have to be able to talk about those things too. And, business plans are really important. Like I said, I think because of the type of business that we had a business plan.
Yeah.
It wasn't one of those formal ones that you would take to a bank because we didn't necessarily need the investment at that time. You know what I'm saying? But once we branch out, we're going to need a business plan if we need generating some income and sponsors and all of those kind of things. But if you are invested into, like those brick and mortar type businesses, you need to be able to come up with business plans. I think like you were talking about strengths, like everybody has their different strengths. Somebody might be a good marketer, and that's very important. Someone, might have that legal advice. Someone might have the budgeting advice. So pulling on those resources and making sure that I think it's important that everybody should be able to be a connector at the very least. I can't do it, but I know X, Y, and Z, because it gets real. I just think you have to be able to weigh the balance of things, right? It gets real, it can get real sticky if one person's always like, I'm always the resource. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's really important that everyone in there is a connector in some kind of way. I can't do this, but, here's a resource.
Yeah, for sure. I think the other thing is making sure, like, don't just pick random friends to go into business with. Like, we need to, like, one person might be more artsy, like maybe their thing is more of like a crafts, your Etsy, what have you, whereas this other person over here is trying to start a car wash. Like, those things do not mix. They're not even the same. Like, you just both want to be business owners, and so those two ideas don't make sense together.
Right.
And even the scale of it, like the things that you're going to have to do to start each are totally different. You could create an Etsy account now. And, you know what I mean? So it is different in that regard. And so I think those really preliminary conversations about what are you interested in? What are the things that you like? What is the, is this person more in it for the money versus is it really important for this person to, I want to run this business, but I want to give back. I want to make a difference. Those might be two totally different business models. And so those are the kind of like conversations that you have to have. And definitely those check-ins, because again, we're friends, but we're also in this business to generate some kind of income, whether it's supplementary or whatever. And so, to your point, you have to separate the two, whether it's a meeting, whether it's however you want to do it, FaceTime, whatever, make an appointment.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing, and we've kind of touched on it before, but like with business, the other side of that is if you're a person who has a business, sometimes your friends aren't going to necessarily support your business. They're not necessarily going to do the repost or share like that, or even utilize whatever kind of service or product that you have.
Yeah.
And I think that, of course, some of us you know, maybe it's just because how we are, it's just like, oh, well, I would do this, this, that, and the third for them. Like, it kind of feels like it's kind of hurtful that they don't support it or, you know, watch or buy this or come to this yoga studio, whatever it is. And I think the thing is to remember, just like you said before, is to kind of like separate the two. First of all, talk to the lady because your feelings are valid and you're going to have to work through those feelings. But separate the fact that your business, maybe your friend doesn't do yoga. Or maybe, you know, maybe your friend washes their own car instead of go to the car wash. I don't know. But, you know, and still be authentic to yourself. If you're that friend that like, look, regardless of whatever business you have, I'm going to do something. I'm going to buy the gift cards. I'm going to do the things. Like, still be authentic to yourself, but be able to separate, just like if you were actually a business partner with your friend, like, hey, this is my business and maybe I might get a lot of support over here from a total stranger comparatively.
Yeah. I think that's always difficult because you do want your friends to support you, you know, especially if you vocalize it. You know, hey, can y'all share this? Or, you know, leave a comment. It's free, you know, and it still doesn't happen. I think it can be hurtful. But like you said, you still have to be authentic to yourself. Of course, don't allow that to change you. You know, if you're like, you know, that person, like you said, that person that's always supporting or feel like you are. Because I think people always feel like I'm very supportive. Like, I think everybody thinks that about themselves. I don't think there's anyone that would be like, I'll support people. Like, I don't think anyone verbalizes that. But if you feel like you are one of those people that's just like, no matter what, you just always showing up. You always, you know, then just continue to do that. Like, like you said, your who is meant for you will be there, you know? But like I said, I don't think it takes away, definitely doesn't take away any of the hurt when it doesn't happen. I think so, I think it's important because I remember one time that we, probably for a span of a few months, probably maybe 5 or 6 months, we were just business, right? And we were like, dang, when's the last time we just actually chilled out as girls, you know?
We were like married couple.
and that's what it made me think of, right?
Yeah. Like, all right.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, not married, but you hear that all the time. Like, you just fall into this role of this is what we're doing, and you forget the relationship that started it all, right?
Yeah.
So just making sure that you're still nurturing that relationship, because I think that's also like when people do watch us and they do listen to us, they're like, it's the authenticity between us, right? The way we bounce off each other. But that comes with still hanging out. That comes with having those calls when I'm hurt and she's there for me and vice versa. You know, it's not always just business. Like, no, if I'm sick, she's showing up at the hospital, you know? So making sure that the basis of why you even felt like this was a great person to get into business with, making sure that relationship is continuing to be nurtured.
Yeah, for sure. I think, and that's sometimes how you could get caught up in the business of it. It is very important to have those like systems set up so that it's not infringing on your friendship. So like when we first started, we did, I mean, I guess legal minds, we did all the things. We set up a business bank account. We weren't doing all that, oh, I'm going to pay for this, I'm going to cash app this. No. Right. We even set up a business cash app, you know. Yeah. And so, and we decided like, okay, every couple months, this is what I'm going to put in the business account. All the expenses are coming out of that, which is important, obviously, for legal purposes if you're LLC or S Corp and all the things. But also, it just makes things less messy. Yeah. And so... And you
don't have the headache of feeling like I got to text them this month to ask for this amount of money. Like,
right. It's there. So it's just like, I think that once you, to your point, are a well-oiled machine, it's kind of like, all right, cool. Yeah. But it is important to like still build fun in that, because part of the why and that foundation was that conversation where you were laughing over drinks or wine and like, we need to do this. And like in that planner and dreamer mindset, I think it's important to have that as that foundation, especially for when things aren't happening as quickly as you wanted them to.
Ooh, yes.
That you still at the end of the day, like, we're friends and this is a thing that we did together.
Right.
I think the only other thing that I would say is like, be very intentional, but also open in terms of how you define success. I think when you're in your early start as a business, it's very easy to feel like, I didn't make $10,000 this year, like I'm failing or I'm not being successful. And I think certainly if you are a for-profit business, you do want to see income coming in, but it's also important to look at some of those statistics, like where am I comparatively, but also what successes did I have that weren't necessarily monetary, and be open to that too. Like, just like at the gym, like the success might not be actually on the scale. It might be in your measurements. It might be your max is increasing. Like, there's other measures of you being healthier and fitter than just the scale. And so that's why I was saying, like really be open to what success means.
Yeah. And so I think my last two would be adaptable, because seasons change, like especially if you're, part of your business is social media, it ebbs and flows. Like I heard recently Twitter's not called Twitter anymore or something. Like it's called
X. I don't tweet.
I don't either. So, Elon. So you do have to be adaptable in your goals, not necessarily with the foundation of your purpose, but how you achieve those goals might have to change. You might have to be adaptable in that. And then also making sure you have a discussion about reinvestment, right? So once those ducats do start rolling in for that business, how much of it are we returning to the business? How much of it are, we put it in our own pockets? Are we going to pay ourselves as employees? Like those kind of conversations, I think should happen before the money comes in, because, depending on what you do, if it's coming in large, you might, feel real differently.
It took us 5 years taking this.
So, have to have those kind of conversations about reinvestment.
All right. Cool. Well, listen, we hope you and your friends are doing well. If you're going into a business, definitely check out. I think every state has SCORE. They have free resources if you're starting your business. We will leave you with our information. If you have questions, comments, concerns, divaadvice@gmail.com. That's DIVAADVICE@gmail.com. Instagram, Facebook, Divas and Ducats. Our website, www.divasandducats.com. So we wish you well. Go start the things. Go do the things.
Right.
All right.
Peace. Have a great attitude.
All right. Bye.
Bye.